Should we say
Okay.
hello or should we say what's up? You want to remember those commercials?
I do actually remember those commercials. Wow, we have so many different people, greeting us from, wow, someone's in Disneyland. Oh, goodness, have so much fun. I'm jealous.
Right?
Okay, Finland, Germany. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We're super excited to have you here.
I hope the person from Disney is currently actively on a roller coaster. That would be really amazing.
I know, I want to know which one now. Okay. All right, everyone. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you again so much for joining us here today. We have a very exciting presentation for you on building mobile games with Ionic and Phaser. My name is Diana Alarcon. I'm a part of the marketing team here at Ionic. And before officially presenting your two incredible speakers for today, I'll be going over just a few housekeeping items. So first of which, today's presentation is being recorded and will be available for reference later on today. So once again, being recorded, you'll definitely be able to watch it, rewatch it, and share it with your colleagues or friends that are interested. Second of all, I wanted to go over that we will be having a Q&A, so please submit those questions. We're really excited for your engagement and participation today. So go ahead at any time and insert those questions into that Q&A panel, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. So it's my absolute pleasure to be able to present today our trusted partners and friends from OpenForge. So the speakers will be Jedidiah Weller, who is CEO and software guru of OpenForge. And then joining him, we have Ricardo Madrid, who is a mobile app engineering specialist. Thank you both for joining us today. And you all are in for a treat because their presentation it's pretty awesome, everyone. So I hope that you all enjoy. To kick us off right off the bat, we're going to go ahead and we're going to launch a poll. So let's all get warmed up. I'm going to launch that right now. If you could all please reference your screens for a moment. We'll be having a few polls throughout the duration of the webinar, and we'd love to receive your participation, your feedback, and engagement. So like I said, let's get warmed up right off the bat. We'd love to know, what type of mobile game are you looking to build in 2022? So I'll just give it a few extra seconds here for everyone to be able to participate. And thank you so much in advance.
Awesome. All right, awesome. Yeah, and this question, thank you for Deanna. This question is very important, by the way, guys, because the question we're asking around what type of mobile game you want to build will kind of help guide some of the conversation today. If we see if we see like a particular topic that's very, very interesting to people, we'll try to address it as much as we can. And again, as Deanna pointed out, this is going to be a very engaging presentation. So please treat this as a conversation. Feel free to ask questions live as we go. And one of the things I've asked is that Deanna and Ricardo totally interrupt me many times throughout the presentation. So if there are questions, just put them out there, and we'll try to get to them as best we can. So appreciate that.
Okay, thank you everyone for participating in the poll. I'm going to go ahead and end that now, and let's just share some results here for everyone. Okay, so wow, it's pretty everywhere. If we're seeing that 39% option number 1, pretty close as well, 39% for option number 6, puzzle games. Think Candy Crush. Very nice, very nice. Okay, well, once again, thank you everyone so much for being with us here today and for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and let the experts here take it away. And on behalf of Ionic and everyone here at Ionic, thank you again.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right, so hey everyone, my name is Jedidiah Weller. As Deanna said, I am the CEO and founder of OpenForge. And we are here today to talk about a very, very exciting topic, which is building mobile games with a combination of Ionic and Phaser, right? So what I saw from the poll results here, that it looks like we're kind of a little bit split between a multiplayer, the Candy Crush type games, the Clash of Clans type games, and if you guys are software developers, statistically we generally enjoy video games. So it's a really exciting topic for us. And it's an exciting topic for me because I actually learned software development from video games as well. So we're going to be talking about all of that. Quick, interesting note in case you guys don't know the business model behind mobile games. If you want to know what Candy Crush made in revenue in just 1 year alone in 2020, it was about, I think it was what, 1,190 million. That's what it was. So a lot of revenue can be made from mobile games. And that's another reason why we're so passionate about this. All right. So like I said, we are going to talk about Ionic and Phaser. Why on earth would we combine these two beautiful technologies? How does it help us with mobile applications and mobile games? And we're going to show you exactly how. We actually have an open source repository that we've made just for you as part of this webinar and as part of this presentation. We have some live code examples. We're literally going to get in the weeds here. So very excited about that. And just to give you a quick preview of what a game could look like. This is actually a game that we've built. It's for a company we own called Startup Wars. And this is using Ionic and Phaser. And as you can see, there is no limitation to what you can do with Ionic and Phaser. It is a great combination of technologies. We've been trusted partners with Ionic. I mean, we've been using Ionic since Alpha. It was 8 years ago, I think it was. And Phaser is a technology that we just started adopting, I'd say probably like 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and we've just loved it. So again, very excited for this. So just real quick introductions for myself, and then I'll let Ricardo introduce himself. So I'm a software developer by trade. I started coding when I was about, I think it was like 1998. I was about probably 10 years old. And I started coding because of a video game called Tribes 2. And if anyone remembers, Tribes 2 is a first-person shooter. And in order to have your own like guild or your clan page in Tribes, you had to actually code it in HTML and CSS. So I wanted to have my own guild. So I started learning. I was from the country, like Amish country. And so, no one around me was into computers or technology, but I was super into video games. And that's how I learned my entire career, okay? Now I run OpenForge Enterprises, and also Startup Wars. And we also invest in some mobile application-based businesses as well from the parent company. I talk about both technology from a developer perspective, and I also speak about startups and starting businesses and founder stories all across the world. So that's what I'm excited about. That's what I'm into. And we have the fabulous, wonderful Mr. Ricardo. Ricardo, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Jedi. So hello, my name is Ricardo Madrid. I'm from Honduras. I don't have any broken bones as Jedi. I have 0, but yeah, it's a fun fact for me. And yeah, I am a senior software engineering and mobile specialist here at Ionic. Yeah, it's a pleasure for me to be here to present this webinar with Jedi.
Awesome. Thank you, Ricardo. Yeah, it's so good to have you. Ricardo is a newer member of our team for maybe like a year or so now, and just absolutely super skilled in Ionic and mobile development. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, please, Ricardo is the go-to. I also saw a question from the audience from Philip. What version of Phaser are we going to be using? We're using the latest version 3. So this demonstration will be based on the latest. All right, awesome. And I cannot give any presentation without introducing our team. The OpenForge team, we specialize in mobile applications, right? So, we just love mobile. You can see from our logo, I don't know if you can see the hoodie or in the background, mobile is all we do. So we're very, very passionate about it. We have about 24 million users across the United States for all the different apps that we built. And yeah, mobile is where it's at, right? Everything is going mobile. This is our specialty. I'm not going to bore you guys with too much about the company. If you want to learn more about us, please go to openforge.io and you can totally learn more. This conversation is about Ionic and Phaser. So let's dive in. A quick look at our agenda, just from a high level view, okay? We're going to be talking about why Ionic and Phaser, the combination, how it can benefit from a productivity perspective and utilizing your existing web development skills. We're going to show you actually how to integrate Ionic and Phaser together. We will talk a little bit about performance and some very important caveats that you, if you maybe tried the combination on your own and you said, oh my God, my computer's exploding. There's probably a reason for that, and we'll show you why. And then also, we'll talk a little bit about game architecture, really going to focus on class instantiation, right? And specifically with TypeScript. And then, yeah, we'll kind of look over a step-by-step guide together. So that is the general agenda. Did I miss anything from that, Ricardo?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, beautiful. Awesome. So, all right, let's start out by just doing a high-level benefits of Phaser. So, Phaser, what is it? It is a JavaScript/TypeScript technology, a library for building out 2D games. Now, it is very much like Ionic in the sense that it is free and open source. It is fully extendable, so you can write custom plugins for it. You can really customize it in any way that you want to. And the two most important pieces here are that Phaser has already created a lot of the logic, actually, basically all the logic you'll ever need for actually putting in animations, putting in like transitions, dealing with sprites and characters and graphics. All of that is already included in the actual library. And same with stuff that's very common in games, such as like physics engines, like handling velocity, handling collision points, detecting, where an object is in space. All of this is in the library, and they have really good documentation as well. So highly recommend, kind of reading through their documentation. Now, how does that kind of compare against Ionic? Well, Ionic is also free and open source, right? And one of the best things about Ionic that I know is one of the reasons that we use it exclusively, right? We really, whenever we're doing any mobile application, we don't even bother using any other type of technology, is primarily the code reuse. So, if any of you have developed like an application with maybe like React, right? Or React Native, you'll often hear about code reuse and say, oh yeah, you can build it once, but it can be reused across everything. And that applies, for what we found, maybe like 80–90%. But generally, you still have to make these modifications. In our experience with Ionic, you really don't have to do any changes from different devices. And that's super important for any application lifecycle, right? The other thing is adaptive styling, right? And the support for many different technologies. So obviously at this point, Ionic supports Angular, React, and Vue, which is really cool. And then if you're offering an enterprise like solution, which many of our customers are, then Ionic does have a lot of SaaS-based products and subscription products for stuff like AppFlow, right? Which allows you to just get to market faster. They provide enterprise support. It's really beneficial, right? And not only is it really beneficial, it saves you time. And I'm sure you all know that time is the biggest thing. And that's one of the key focus points of both Phaser and Ionic here, is that these are libraries where the teams that built them, they have put in the time, they've put in the effort, right? And so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And that's like the most important critical piece, right? Anything I missed there, Ricardo?
No, just saying that some people are asking us how version of Phaser we're working on, and we're working on Phaser 3. So just a little comment here.
Yeah, beautiful. And actually, I think, is our Angular version for this presentation, are we using 13?
Yeah, 13.
Yeah, okay, 13. Yeah, so Angular 13. Go ahead,
yeah,
sorry.
Ionic 6, by the way.
And Ionic 6, yep, beautiful. All right, cool. So we talked about what Ionic is separately and what Phaser is separately. So why would we use them together, right? And this is the most important high-level concept of this presentation. When you are developing any mobile application, okay, there is going to be there's a lot of functionality that is going to be common between any different type of application. So whether you're building a dating app like Tinder, or whether you're building a game like Candy Crush, you're going to have authentication. You're going to have the splash screen, you're going to have the register screen, you're going to have the login screen, social login with Facebook, Google, you name it, right? You're going to have a settings page. You're going to have a user profile page, right? All of that. Well, as a quick example, to build that in Ionic, like let's say just the registration flow, I don't know, 8 to 16 hours, probably, like an entire registration flow. Right? You think that's a fair estimate, Ricardo?
Yeah, it's okay. And it is more easy if you're using like Firebase as your backend provider. It's pretty much easier to do not waste time, like you said, inventing the wheel.
Exactly, right? Because every app needs some sort of version of authentication, and the flow is basically the same. Now, if you build that flow with Ionic, you're looking at a day or two. Okay. Now, obviously, if you have some complex backend logic, it might take you longer. But for the front end, component side of it, it's a day or two, and that means it's a day or two, including supporting all the different mobile phones, whether it's an iPhone SE, an iPhone 10, 13, a Samsung Galaxy, a Note, a Flip. It doesn't matter what it is, because again, Ionic as a front-end UI library has already done the work of making sure that their components are automatically responsive for all the different screen sizes. If you did that same flow in Phaser, it would take you a week plus, right? Because you're now going to be custom, the way Phaser works, it really relies on, on the actual game assets, which are going to be like, custom created assets for you. So it does not provide that UI library. And that's an important difference here. Okay. So, if we go with the reverse aspect and we say, okay, well, what's Phaser good at, right? Well, Phaser, we can add an image or add an animation or a sprite in Phaser in like 3 seconds. It would take a lot longer in Ionic. And I think we actually tried it once. And we did it after a long while, but it had major performance issues, right? It was not a pretty implementation. It's just not as easy because Ionic wasn't built for games alone, and Phaser wasn't built for business logic alone, right? So that's the core concept here of combining these two technologies together, right? Is that Ionic is great for the business presentation. And when you are building a mobile app with Ionic and Ionic UI components, you can very quickly get to market, and that would allow you extra time to work on your actual game mechanics, right? Which are going to take you longer, but they're going to be a lot quicker in Phaser. Okay. So I hope that makes sense to everyone. If anyone has any questions about that, feel free to post them. All right, cool. So I think right here is where we are going to jump into the code. So let's get in. I'm going to try to exit this and come into our repo. So very first thing. So we're going to dive in. We're going to be talking about we're going to go through the actual repository. First things first, just to give you guys an idea. And if you are at your computer and not riding a roller coaster at Disney, like the one person is, then you can actually go to our repo here, github.com/OpenForge. We have 2 templates that are going to be, I think, pretty important for this conversation. We have a Ionic Monorepo template. Now, this one is just a standard Ionic application in a NX monorepo, and we use this as the basis for this template, the Ionic Phaser game template. So the Ionic Phaser game template is the one that we're going to be using in this conversation. Obviously, if you want to just create an Ionic app and you want to use a Monorepo structure, you can use this one. If you want to do it with both Ionic and Phaser, you can use this one here. So feel free to clone this and follow along. The easiest way, if you've never used a template before from GitHub, is just click use this template, and it allows you to create your own repository. If you do like this, please, we just launched this for this webinar. So we literally just finished it up this morning, I think it was, right, Ricardo? And so if you do like this, please give us a star. And if you have any issues that you run across, just create an issue in GitHub. As developers, that the whole 9 yards here, so we don't need to go too in depth. So that is what we're going to show here. And Deanna, just because I can't really see how easy it is to see the screen, or I guess for the audience, can you guys see this okay if I have it at this Zoom level? Yeah. Okay. Beautiful.
Looks good.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So just some really important things. Whenever we're instructing anyone on creating a mobile application or just an application of any type, I always want to start with process enforcement. Right? I know it's not the topic of this conversation, but it is so worthwhile just spending like 3 minutes talking about it. Okay. So first things first, we are using Narwhal's NX Monorepo structure. So the structure and some of the different configurations in here you'll see are from that. We have a workspace.json. We have an nx.json. Okay. We still have our package JSON. This is a Angular application. We're using Angular here. And then we have a couple of things. So let me see. Let me scroll up, down. All right. So in this, we have already configured ESLint, and we also have Prettier already configured, right? So if you are using this as a template, you will probably save, I don't know, maybe like 20 to 30 hours of time just configuring all this different stuff that we have set up here. It does auto lint on save. It will give us some warnings and some errors. So just keep that in mind. And you might not be used to this, and a lot of times when people hire us to help out their development team or help out their team, we'll find a lot of issues are often caused by not having these type of standards in place. Stuff like how to use a promise properly, right? Between different versions of TypeScript and JavaScript, you can either try to remember every single rule there is for how to use TypeScript, or you can just hook up ESLint and it tells you a lot of this stuff, right? So it's a much better approach there. Let's see, and I think, so that's package JSON, Prettier, and ESLint. I think that's most of the ones that we have set up here. Is that right, Ricardo? Do we have any other ones for this repository? Let me see here. Oh yeah, and here, this is the last piece. We have the pre-commit and pre-push for Husky. So basically, it just makes sure that everything is linted before you push and everything is built. And then on pre-commit, it just does the npx lint. So that's important. Also, depending on the size of your application, this application we're showing you is not going to need this. But sometimes when you're hooking up to CI/CD, you're going to need to increase your maximum space for Node. That way, your application can run. If you don't have this, sometimes it will just like crash and give you an error. So we have that implemented as well.
Yeah, and it's important to mention that these steps are very important to have a good standard on our repos, because we are like avoiding some like errors that sometimes we have in the code before following some standards of programming. So it's really important. That's why we have those line of code to verify before commit to GitHub.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a really good point. And also, I just saw a couple of questions here. One from Bob is, what benefits are there to using Ionic as opposed to just using your favorite JS framework with capacitor and phaser? It's a really good question. It's mostly related to the UI library as well as some of the support that they provide. We found that using AppFlow, for instance, it will save over the course of a year. If you have a full development cycle, it will save like a month worth of developer time just going through that process. It's really, really nice. And then same with the UI library. The UI library is specific for mobile, whereas Angular's or Google Material it's not, right? So it's they are responsive, but it's not hyper focused. And whenever you find a technology or just any product that hyper focuses on one thing, there's generally going to be better at that one thing than one that is more abstract. So I hope that answers that question. And then I'm just going to
lots of great questions coming in. Thank you, everybody. Keep them coming.
Yeah. So for Dartpit, yes, you can totally upgrade from Ionic 3 to Ionic 6. And Deanna, maybe you'd be actually better to, like maybe there's a link or a resource you could put in the chat for a guide, because there's a lot of guides out there, Dartpit, for how to upgrade.
Absolutely.
And then, so I just answered that one. You guys are full of questions. I love it. This is awesome. All right, and since I'm a beginner, what do you advise me to start with, Angular, Vue, or React? Ricardo, why don't you answer this one?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It depends of how you manage the language. But I think that Angular is the best way to start, because Angular has a more solid documentation, and yeah, you can follow you can follow the steps to start with Angular. And yeah, I think that the best way to start is with Angular.
Awesome. All right, cool. And I know there's a lot of more questions, but we're just gonna get through a little bit more, and then hopefully we'll answer some of these questions. But we promise to get through them all. All right, beautiful. So let's start out by just looking at the overall structure of the repository. So if you haven't used a monorepo before, basically the whole concept is that everything is in one place. And this allows you to really organize your code and make it so that multiple different applications can use the same code base, okay? So in this example, we have our example app and our example app E2E, right? So that's the one that we're actually gonna be using for this. And we also have a libs directory. Now the libs directory has two folders under it. It has example app, and then it has shared, right? So the idea here is that anything that is specifically a library for this example app would be under here. And we have this broken out between Ionic and Phaser, okay? And then anything that's shared across all of the different apps that might use this monorepo would be under the shared repo. So to give you an example of this, we have our classes defined under a data access model, right? And this basically means that if we were, let's say we called this game that we're going to show you, the Forge, okay? And it's all about, creating like a blacksmith creating swords. Well, maybe we wanted to create a second game, the Forge 2.0, right? And we wanted to create a new app for it because it's a different game, but we don't want to recreate all the work that we've done. Well, we don't have to. We can just import all of our classes from the shared data access model, and it would allow us to use them in both applications. And that's a really important piece. Okay, cool. Oh, and you know what I should do here is we should probably show you guys what we are actually looking at. So this is the application that we are looking at, okay? So we have a Ionic application with Phaser here. We have a little blacksmith and his forge. And yeah, this part right here is using Phaser. So the way that we have found has been best to kind of combine the two technologies from like a user experience standpoint is to have Ionic be responsible for most of the navigation and business side. So in this example here, we have the Ionic menu, and I'm going to show you guys just the implementation of this. By the way, there's no rhyme or reason well, there is some rhyme or reason, but there's no specific rhyme or reason to the order in which we're going to show this to you. So basically what we're doing is kind of just basing it on what's a topic of conversation based on your questions at the time. So if we go to the home page here, so we are currently on the home page in our Ionic app. We can see this by localhost/home. And we have just very standard Ionic components here. So we have Ion header, an Ion toolbar, Ion buttons, Ion menu button, and the home page, and that's it, right? There is nothing in this Ion content. And the reason for that is normally Ion content would display right here, okay? Because this is the home page. But we have this being filled in with Phaser, okay? So this class, this div right here is very important. The way Phaser works, and I'm going to show this to you here. I'm going to go to our Singleton of Phaser. And here it is. So basically, what happens in this application is when the application loads, the very first thing that we do is we instantiate our Phaser Singleton service. So if you've never created a Singleton before with Angular, it's very, very easy. Angular's documentation goes super into it. But essentially what this means is a Singleton is it's almost like a global variable, right? And so I know that, global variables as a rule are generally a bad thing, right? However, it is very useful, especially in game applications, game development, to have one single source of truth, right? That can handle different parts of the application revolving around state management. So for us, we have our Phaser Singleton service, which is responsible for storing the active game that's currently going on in Phaser, okay? It has ng zone, and we'll talk about ng zone in a second. It has the actions history. So actions history, we created this as a log to make this easy to show everyone. And it's just going to be the actions that are taken as we're playing. And then we have a shop observable. So this is part of the state management piece that I was referring to. And we found that this is one of the best ways that we've found to do this. If you wanted to make sure that across different pages within your Ionic application, if you're going through the lifecycle, the Angular lifecycle through init and destroy, right? Well, stuff is going to get lost. So this allows us to have one place that we can just centrally reference. All right, and we'll talk more about that in a second. So the constructor for the Phaser Singleton module is pretty straightforward. If it already exists, so if the parent module exists, then we error it out because there should only ever be one instance of a Singleton. And then we are initializing the ng zone, okay? So what does the ng zone mean? Let me go down here to this. All right. So this part is very important. And it actually, when we first combined Ionic and Angular together, we did not run it outside of the Angular zone. And essentially what this means is that when Angular is going through its normal life cycle, it's looking for data updates, right? Within its pages. And then if it finds an update, it re-renders everything. That's kind of like how it works. Well, if Phaser, and Phaser separately, Phaser also does the same thing. So Phaser, but the way Phaser does it is it goes through many, many times a second and calls an update function, right? And so that update function, I think, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it's like 60 ticks per second to kind of emulate 60 frames per second. So when you have the combination of Phaser running 60 times a second, right, inside of Angular, right, which every time it detects a child changing, it also re-renders everything. You basically just get into this loop of non-stop rendering. And when we first did this and we were running it even locally on our computer, occasionally our computer would literally crash and we couldn't figure out why. And then so we started looking at the performance and we could actually see the lifecycle hooks. And then we realized, oh, wow, we need to run these completely separately. So Phaser is a very, it must be run outside of Angular. If it is not, then you're going to trigger multiple lifecycle hooks, okay? Very, very important. All right, then in order to instantiate Phaser, we do this here. If an active game does not exist, we come in here and we say phaser is equal to new phaser game. So this game takes in a configuration. It talks about the scale, right? So we have phaser resizing here. We set the width and the height to the window width and height. We have the parent, and this parent, if we do a search all for this, this is what I was showing you in the home page. So basically what Phaser does is when it creates this new game, it looks for a div with an ID called forge-main, right? You can name this whatever you want. This is just what we named it, right? And so this div must exist. Otherwise, when the game engine starts, it's going to error out because it says, oh, there is no div for me to exist in. Okay. Oh, and Mark Stutz, I just saw Mark said, brilliant, I discovered the crash, not what causes it. Hey, thank you. You are absolutely welcome, Mark. I am glad. I can tell you that when we were first experimenting with this technology, we were looking at like the architecture between the two. I can tell you I spent at least 40 hours, if not more. And, like Ricardo, Maria Jose, like our entire team, we were all banging our heads on this. So don't feel bad. This is one that is just a very difficult one. And it's so funny because it's like one line of code to fix it, but many, many hours to diagnose. I see he says me too. Awesome. Okay, let me see. Anything else, Ricardo, that we should touch on regarding the phaser instantiation or from the audience?
I think we're good.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Beautiful. All right, so let's see here. So when the homepage initializes, we are going to instantiate our Singleton service, and then we call init, right? And init is the function that we just went over here. So that's kind of how the homepage is generated. So let's see. Let's talk about just like resizing for a second. So obviously, Ionic automatically handles, responsive design, and so does Phaser, right? So when we have this Phaser scale.resize in here, right, this is kind of what allows us to resize based upon the screen window. And if we pull up, I'm just going to pull up our console log here so we can see this live in action. Cool. Yep. So I have just a console log that just prints the resize, and it might be a little small, but if you can see, every time we're resizing it, it's just basically taking in the new size of the device. So it doesn't matter what the size is, it still works. So we can put it in a mobile view and it will still work perfectly. Also, this is on the Ionic side. We go back to Ionic here. On our app.component.html, so in the primary app component, this left side is an Ion menu, and it's in an Ion split pane container, right? So basically what we're doing here is we are splitting the application, and we're saying there's a left side, there's a right side, right? When we are in this smaller mobile view, the left side hides, but you can click the burger menu to pop it out. And then when we're in the larger view, it's automatically popped out there. So the nice thing, and again, the nice part about the combination of technologies here is that this would be a lot of work to implement in Phaser. It took 3 seconds in Ionic, right? And a big shout out to Paulina, one of our team members. So she was the one who implemented this piece for us. So always want to give credit where credit is due. All right, so let's see. We got our 3 buttons here. So we have go to homepage, open shop modal, and go to shop page. So let's talk about that for a second. All right, and then Deanna, can we launch that second poll?
Absolutely. Okay, everyone, are we all ready for our second poll? We're going to launch that here right now. Okay, so if you all have a second to please navigate towards your screen or screens, I'm going to leave this poll up here for just a couple of seconds, but it's asking which of the following options are true in TypeScript. So once again, we appreciate your participation and engagement. So I'm going to leave that up on the screen there for you for just a few seconds.
Yeah, let's see what you guys think here. So we're about to create a sword. Let's put this in context. We're about to create a sword, all right? And obviously the blacksmith can't stop working until the sword is created, right? So this has to happen in order. So if we were to implement this, right, with TypeScript, how would we do this? Can we, do we just make a construction of the class, the sword class? What do we do, right? How do we do it? So that's kind of what fuels this question here. I'm excited to see what people think.
Okay, just a couple more seconds, and then we're going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and share the results. What are we looking at here, Jedi?
All right, beautiful. So 68% said that it supports asynchronous class instantiation. All right, beautiful. And 45% said it supports asynchronous class construction. And then we had some people say it does not support asynchronous class instantiation and does not support asynchronous class construction. So if you voted for number 1 and was it number 4 here, then you are correct. So let's take a look at this. So actually here first, let's go ahead and create a cheap sword. So our cheap sword, we click it, the blacksmith is working here, and then we can see after he's finished, the sword is created and he is done working. So he goes to an idle state. Again, if you didn't see that, we click this, he starts working, and then after a couple seconds, a second sword is created. Okay, so we know that we can, do this asynchronously. So let us dive into the actual class itself. And I'm going to go to our data access model here. Let me exit this to clean up. And we're going to go here. Okay, so the big thing about game development is most game development is using some sort of object-oriented approach. Okay, so we've tried to set that up, a very, very basic example for you guys because we just want to kind of showcase it. So we have a human class here. That human just has a name, a constructor, and a build function. The blacksmith himself is a human, right? And he is also a sprite. So basically, we're extending the Phaser game object sprite and implementing our human class here. So can we have an asynchronous constructor? Let's see. No, it's erroring. Why is it erroring? Async modifier cannot appear on constructor declaration. Okay, so we cannot do that. So if you thought that you could, you cannot. And so you might be thinking, oh no, well we can't do this. We can't do this asynchronously. How are we going to actually instantiate a class if we can't construct it asynchronously? Some languages do allow you to do this. Well, fear not, there is a solution. It is almost like a workaround. So what we can do here, and actually I'm going to go to the sword class because the sword class is the one that we are creating here. We did the same thing. We just had the parent class sword, and then we have a cheap sword and a fancy sword. So let's go into the cheap sword. So our constructor is just a normal constructor, right? We have, we're passing in the phaser scene. We have to pass this in because we need to be able to add the object to the phaser scene, right? We can see here that we're calling superclass, that this is again part of the phaser implementation when we extend the phaser game object's image, because our class is both what we make of it and it is the phaser image. You can do this a different way. You can make it so that you can instantiate your own class and then have a reference to the phaser, like image or phaser animation or sprite that you're doing. We actually did that for one of our applications. We did that approach initially, but lately, we've been leaning towards having it just all be in one class. That way you don't have to maintain references, right? It's a little bit easier. And then we're going to set the stored type, and that's it, right? So this is just a normal constructor. Okay, nothing special here, but that is not asynchronous. So how do we make it asynchronous? Well, what we can do is we can actually create a build function, right? And a build function is just basically a regular function, right? It's a static one, so that exists on every stored type. And this function can be asynchronous, right? So how do we make it async? First, we just instantiate, or we construct a new cheap stored. So this instantly is calling this constructor for this class, and it is putting it on this temporary object. That does not happen asynchronously, okay? Again, that is just going straight. However, we can force it to then wait before we consider this object completed or returned, right? And then we can do that by putting in await new promise, set timeout resolve, right? And, basically we just have an asynchronous function in here to just cause it to take a little extra time. Then after we get that object, then we are going to add it to Phaser. We set the scale here, right? And then we set to visible. What happens if we don't, just to show you guys what the scale is here, I'm going to save this, refresh, go here, purchase. All right, so the scale literally just increases the size. So nice and easy, that's what the scale is. And setting it visible just makes it obviously visible. Ricardo put a nice rotation logic in here to make sure that when we create multiple of these, each time we do it, it's going to create another one, right? And it's going to be in a different like rotation, so we can just see that they are, that there's multiple ones existing, see like that. All right, beautiful. And then we return the object, okay? So this basically is taking our constructor and it's saying, okay, you know what? We have this object, but we're not actually going to return it until after we've waited for certain things to happen. So this can be useful if you have to, maybe pull data from your server. This can be useful if you're, doing some sort of logic other places in your application. If you don't do this, you may run into a race condition, right? You may try to use an object before it's actually instantiated. And when we first started with this, and we first started with this game development, we actually were doing that, right? And we didn't even see that the objects were not being instantiated in the correct order, because generally it's so quick, right? If you're not actually waiting for anything, and we had a lot of stuff actually instantiating in the very beginning of the application. But remember, when you're building a mobile app, and this is kind of key, the mobile experience is a huge indicator on how your app is going to succeed. So if you have a very, very long initial loading time because you're instantiating everything, right? Then two things can happen. One, you are going to see just statistically higher drop-offs in people using your application, right? There's an initial statistic in the mobile app industry about how many people download the app versus then install it, right? And both of those have different drop-offs. And then once you versus actually use it, right? So like log in, and then from logging in to loading the actual application, there's another drop-off point there. So there's a user experience side. There's also going to be a memory side, and I'm not sure. I have some older phones here, but basically, like if you're on an older device, and we've run into this a couple of times, if you have very large assets, or you have a lot of stuff that you're trying to load in memory all at once, if someone's using an old iPhone, like an iPhone 4, right, or even an iPhone 5, well, you might actually crash that device or crash your application on the device because you're going out of bounds of how much memory it has. So another advantage that you can get here, right, is you don't have to load everything in the very beginning. You can start loading stuff with the actual class creation throughout your application as it's actually generated. So that provides a lot of benefit too. All right, cool. Let's see here.
Oh,
yeah.
Question that the audience asked, and I think that for this part, we're gonna be able to answer. So one of the questions that I think is very important is like Paul asked, why do you need the sword creation to be async?
Oh yeah, awesome. So yes, the sword creation, the reason you would need it to be async, in this example, let me see. Here, I can give you a perfect reason, actually, because we actually do have that. So when we click create sword, I'm going to do a fancy sword because it takes longer. Oops. Our blacksmith is like, we're playing this animation. We don't want to actually stop that animation or tell them to go idle again until the sword is created. Now, we could use some sort of callback, right, or a promise, but then what's going to happen is we're going to have a ton of promises, right? Like we're just going to be like, we're going to have a bunch of different listeners all throughout the application for every single type of class. And most games are going to have like 500 plus classes, right? So by doing it this way, we no longer have to build in like actual listener logic just for the class to be instantiated or to be created. We literally are just calling a single line of code, and that line of code would be in the blacksmith object here. So when we purchase the sword, and actually what we can do here is, let me start from up top. So if we go into the shop component, we see here, we just have these two cards. So open a shop modal, two cards, and the purchase is just a button. So we go into purchase. And we can see here that what we do is we pass in a shop observable. So why do, I'm going to answer this question. I just want to first take a second to show why we're doing this here. So we don't need a shop observable on this screen because we're still on Phaser. And so it's just like a modal. But if you wanted to use Ionic navigation to go back and forth between your Phaser like instance where your game world is and the rest of the application, and we wanted to pass this in, right? We would need to make sure that it the blacksmith knows about it, right? So when I click purchase here, basically what's happening is we're sending the we're basically shooting out to this shop observable, which the blacksmith subscribes to. And we're saying, hey, you just got a new order, right? And then so once the blacksmith receives that, let's go here. Blacksmith class. Cool. So once the blacksmith receives that, then he basically says, okay, if the sword type is a fancy one, I'm going to build a fancy sword. Otherwise, if it's cheap, I'm going to build a cheap sword. But here is basically the answer to that question. Instead of having like a separate subscription to wait for a sword to be created and to then like handle that one individually because it's a single instance, right? Instead, we can just say, hey, let the sword await for fancy sword.build. Nice and easy. It's clean code. It allows you to make sure that the actual object is created before you then do the next thing. And then you can see down here, when we go idle is this logic right here. So this dot play, and then we pass in the key of the blacksmith's idle state. So there's nothing else that it's waiting for. If we didn't have this, if this class instantiation was not asynchronous, then as soon as we click that button, he would start hammering and then he would stop hammering. And then 3 seconds later, the sword would be created. So that's why. Beautiful. Yep. Awesome. I'm just looking through. Yeah. Is it possible to create a multiplayer game, a multi-platform game, iOS, Android, web using Ionic and Phaser? Yeah, actually, absolutely. So to give you a quick case study of, like the real power of doing it this way is when we were first launching Startup Wars, which is, again, one of our other companies, we went to market first with mobile. And we built it as an Ionic and Phaser application. And we launched on mobile. We launched on iOS, Android, right? And those were our two things. And I might even be able to pull up, let me see if I can pull up something here on this other screen. Startup Wars, there we go, here. So I'll give you an example here. So we launched this application first, just mobile, right? There's a whole 9 yards. Then we realized, wow, our users are not using it on mobile at all. They want web because we're selling to universities. So we then said, oh man, do we have to rebuild the entire application just to make it, web-based? Luckily, the answer was no, right? What we did was we just shifted it, and we shifted it to web, right? Because Ionic, is a web-based technology, and it automatically supports PWAs. So that was easy. And then Phaser, again, is also a web-based technology. And so Phaser is actually specifically for web, and the primary use case is web. Like, it's not necessarily mobile, but because it's running inside of Ionic and Angular here, it can render just like anything else. So yeah, so it was super, super easy to actually just switch from iOS, Android to web, and we can still deploy whenever we want to iOS and Android and just launch it as a native app on the App Store. So yeah, very, very easy. And I hope that answered that question. We have a lot of questions here. Let's see. How do you run Phaser outside of Angular? What would that look like? Real quick, that's what the NG zone is. Earlier in the presentation, Andrew, I had mentioned it, but I'll just bring it up here again really quick. It's this line of code right here. So if you go to our repository, that's where you're looking at. Oh, wow. And we are very, very close to time. So I am going to wrap us up here. Let me just see. Is there anything else, Ricardo? I think we wanted to look at tips and tricks, right?
Yeah, we can run into a real quick tips and tricks. So we are gonna mention some tips and tricks of what you can do with Ionic. So first of all, I want to mention that Ionic, it's a great tool to build mobile apps faster. So you can see that basically we have like some questions of if Ionic is a native web-based progressive web-based, how I can access to natives cores of the mobile. So Capacitor is a great and open source native tool for combine with Ionic and build native web native apps. So Capacitor allow us to access to a big core natives APIs and even create our own. We can pass to a simple web app to a native app in just seconds. So what allows Capacitor to us? We can access to the core native APIs. We can we have a big library of core native plugins. We have a great community that develop plugins and is easily to install and develop. So when we use Capacitor, we can access like we are developing a native app. So it's a great tool that we recommend to use. And it's a tool that is, that is not like someone in the chat say that Cordova is dead. No, Cordova is not dead, but Capacitor is a cross-platform native runtime by Ionic. So we have the idea that this tool is always will be the same for Ionic. So another tip is that we can destructure an object. Jedi, if you want to.
Oh yeah, go to the next one. You got it.
We can destruct an object easily and assign to directly to a variable. So what we are doing sometimes is like we declare a const variable and await for the function, and then we call to the variable that we want to assign that const that we declare above, and in a single line of code we can call the isAdmin, and then we can call the variable, and then we can await for the function response, and that's the way that we can destructure an object easily. And we are like saving a single a line of code. That saving line of code is always a good a good tip and trick. And then we are like another Angular tip. If you're going to the next line, yeah, we can use this single line to see what file the other this one. We use this single line to see what file we generate. We have created them. So we simple add dry run true to see what files we are gonna generate without creating them. So that's a good tip. Yeah, we have the other tip that we can add alias to our project instead of making dot slash to get our component. We can simplify this process by specifying the aliases in our tsconfig.json, so we can easily access to that component when import in the tsconfig file. So we name the alias that we are going to create, and then we specify to which folder this aliases is listening to. So instead of use the dot slash, we can do the company or whatever you can name in the aliases, and then access to our components easily.
Yeah, and that's really, really useful, especially if you guys do a lot of refactoring, or you're changing things up in your application. That will save you a lot of crazy amounts of line of code that you'll have to change. I know we've definitely seen that in some of the applications we've done. So yeah, that's awesome. So hey everyone, I know we're a couple minutes over. We're just going to do probably like 3 more minutes. I want to touch base on a couple things, and then I'm going to see about questions. There are so many questions. This is a hot topic. You guys are awesome. Okay, so real quick, just a quick recap on the repository here, right? Again, this entire repository is available in as an open source repository. Just go to github.com/openforge, and it's the Ionic Phaser game template. There was a couple of questions about performance in the comments here. So in terms of performance, so the performance limitation here would just be basically based upon what Phaser supports, right? And in terms of like if you're trying to do like a first-person shooter or something like that, I probably wouldn't use Phaser for that, right? I would probably use something else. But Phaser is primarily focused on 2D games, so we're looking at things that don't require a crazy frame rate, and which is most games, right? If we're looking at like Candy Crush, Clash of Clans, that kind of thing, then Phaser is an awesome solution because you can do it you can build the game a lot quicker than you could in something like Unity, right? Also, you don't have the big license fees and that kind of thing. We do have an example here. It's a little bit older, so it's a little bit outdated, but this open farm puzzle game, this one is like Candy Crush, right? So it's one of those, those, what do you call it? Match 3 puzzle games. So if you want to see how that's implemented, you can totally check out this one. Like I said, we haven't updated this repository since 2020, so it is a little bit older. In terms of some of the people asking about like, what would this look like in Vue.js? What would this look like in React? If that is something that you're interested in seeing, please, add a comment here. So, just you can either put in like a request. You can email us. You can contact us however you'd like. We basically build out stuff that the community asks for, and so if that's what somebody want to see, then absolutely. So a couple quick kind of like closing pieces. So we'll be emailing everyone just a quick follow up after the conference. Just as a thank you, we'll be providing the copy of the slide deck. We'll be providing a link to the repository, and if there's anything else that's asked for in like the questions, that we can provide, we'll absolutely provide it. One thing to note here is if you do go to, so later this week, we're going to be launching the new version of our mobile academy. So if you are interested in, just like getting updates, like tips and tricks, getting notified about mobile applications in general, we release a lot of content relating to the mobile application industry. It's not Ionic focused. It's not Phaser focused. It's a combination of both, plus the business side of mobile applications, right? So definitely sign up here. We have a lot of different articles. This isn't live yet. So if you go to our active website, you won't see this yet. That's going to be launched, I think, on Thursday or Friday. I'll have to check with the marketing team. But if you're watching this as a recording, obviously it's already going to be up here. And then same with our YouTube channel. We do have a video up on YouTube already that goes a little bit in depth into creating a Ionic and Phaser game. And from these questions, we'll probably create a couple more videos that are really focused on some of these questions you guys are asking, because I know we can't get through all of them. But I mean, these are great questions. So I want to make sure we can answer everything. And so we'll have to do like a follow-up. Maybe we'll have to do a part 2 of this, Deanna. And then very last thing, we are actively hiring. So if you are interested in working on mobile apps for a living, all we do is mobile. And we also are now getting into game development as well as part of that. So you can go to openforge.io, and it is /opportunities, I believe. Yeah, let me just see here. Opportunities. Let's see. I believe that's it. Yep, that is it, right? And so we are currently hiring for development roles, design roles, and quality assurance roles. So yeah, that definitely join on in there. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is the last slide. So thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. Feel free to reach out again to us directly. It is Ricardo at openforge.io, Jedi at openforge.io. Happy to answer any questions and help you guys however we can. Can't do this without you. It's a lot more fun to do this together. So thank you guys so much. And Deanna, anything else from your side?
Thank you so much, everybody. We're closing out here today. So many questions, like Jedi said, but we're honestly super happy and stoked about the level of engagement. We hope that you all enjoyed it. And for those of you that stayed until the end, just a little bit of preview, I guess. Jedi and his team will be joining us again next month. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to have another great and amazing presentation from our trusted partners and friends at OpenForge. So be on the lookout for that invitation and for that registration information. But as he said, if you are curious about a recording, access to slides, anything like that, that will be in a follow-up email coming at you today. So thank you so much to Jedi and Ricardo, and I hope that everyone has a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you. Talk soon, everyone.